All right, what's going on, family? It's a great Sunday, and I'm excited to be on this call with you today as we talk about why most contractors are bidding blind daily. Why most contractors are bidding blind daily. And so today we want to talk about 5 costly mistakes that weaken your bids, the truth about plug and play subquotes, and also why your numbers might be sinking your profits. And so today is going to be a great opportunity to understand what you're doing wrong in your bidding process, possibly that you're bidding blind, or as I tell some of my clients, that you do not know your numbers. And that's one of the largest mistakes I see a lot of my clients doing. They really don't know their numbers. And so how can you lobster bisque? I'm gonna give you somewhat of an appetizer to teach you a little bit. Hey, this is where we're going when we're talking about our actual estimating pro course. So for those of you that are not aware, I am rolling out a pro course on the pre-construction process. Literally, I will unpack A to Z every component, every task, every responsibility when it comes to the pre-construction process from a commercial standpoint. So we're starting from A to Z. We're starting from the time that we go out, we're doing our business development, we're recruiting and procuring work, and then we start that process all the way until we turn it over to our project management team or whoever's going to manage the project. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. And so I want to talk about where it all started. So the bidding process, we had a tradition, and I'm not sure if any of you all have incorporated this tradition. I suggest that you do. But in the 1970s and the 1980s, it became very popular to ring a bell in the office. And I remember most of the companies I worked for, they used to ring a bell and everybody would start cheering. And it was an indicator that we either won a major project, we signed a GMP deal, or we received a nice project, and we were all excited because to have work means we keep working. To have contracts means we keep working. And so the bell became a symbol of victory over competition, team effort paying off. You know, we used to have what's called a war room where several of us are sitting there putting the estimate together. We're on the phone with different subcontractors receiving bids and receiving quotes, because at that time we were putting together sometimes tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars together from sometimes 30, 40, 50 different subcontractors are submitting their bids, and we had to turn it in by 2 p.m. and we had to know we had the right number. And so we're in what we call the war room, and we're on the phone with subs. Matter of fact, we were going through our bid tabulation. If you don't know what that is, I'll explain that to you and take a deep dive in our pro course. I also talked about it during a recent series in our Profit Leak series when I talk about how to prepare bid proposals. And so I want to show you, like, in detail that entire process. So today I want to show you, listen, you could easily lose money if you're not really paying attention on what you're doing. And the last thing, everybody in the mentorship, anyone I teach should know, we don't bid blind. You ought to just put that in the chat, come off mute, whatever you got to do. Say, we don't bid blind. We don't bid blind. I need some help out there. All I see is ski masks. We don't bid blind. What do you mean by that, Michael? We don't bid blind. That means even if I make a guess, it's an educated guess. It's an educated guess. Do I always have documentation or support of every number I receive? Absolutely not. Michael, have you bid jobs that you didn't receive subcontractor quotes on? Absolutely. Have you ever put a plug number into an estimate and wasn't sure if it was the right number? Absolutely. But I've never bid blind. And I want to show you what I mean by that, because there's a way to intelligently put numbers on things. Even if you're off, at least you're in the ballpark. Let me say that again. I just came from church and I feel like preaching. Even if you're off, you're in the ballpark. And that's what's really, really important, that you're not hitting foul balls, you're not in left field, right field with the number. You're in the ballpark. That means you're still playing the game. And I want you to understand that you can do this the right way. So it's not about just losing jobs. When you bid blind, you're losing profit. I'm going to say that again. It's not just about losing jobs, it's losing profit. And if you're losing profit, sooner or later, you're losing your business. It's not just about losing jobs, it's losing profit and then losing your business. So most contractors don't lose jobs on price. Watch this. They lose them on process. They lose jobs on process. And so you can look competitive and still bleed profit after the award. And that's really important to know. At the beginning of the job, are we going to be profitable or not? So there may be some things, some steps you take in order to shore up your budget. And we talked about this during our PM plus our Site Super Pro course. We talked about during the buyout process how sometimes we may have to re-estimate the project just to make sure that we set the budget up with a conservative yet accurate budget. And then if we pick up money or if we're going to lose money, we are aware of that at the beginning. 5 estimating mistakes that cost money. The top 5 estimating mistakes that cost money. Number 1, trusting subquotes without review. I'm going to unpack this. Trusting subquotes without review, guessing labor hours, and some of us are not doing that, and I want to correct that. We're going to take a deeper dive in the pro course for pre-construction on how to figure labor hours. I'm going to show you how to look at that. Missing scope clarification, so that means your subcontractor actually did provide a clarification or an exclusion, but you really either misinterpreted or you just missed it altogether. Or maybe they said sales tax not included and you just totally missed that note on their proposal. Forgetting overhead and escalation. Maybe you bid the job and you just said, hey, I'm taking all of my sub costs, but I'm not incorporating all of my overhead costs. So some of you all are saying, hey, I'm going to just take the numbers I've received from my subs, I'm going to mark it up 10, 15%. Well, you may not recognize that your overhead of your company is already at 10, 15%. That means you just took a job to make 0. Come on, Michael, you're talking good. Somebody ought to talk back to me. You talking good, Michael. You didn't recognize, because you're not managing your numbers well, you're not managing your books, you don't really know what percentage your overhead is. And so if you don't know what percentage your overhead is, how in the world can you charge the right profit amount? Because you may be underbidding yourself or underestimating the job because you really didn't recognize the true overhead that's in your business. Ooh, that's heavy. That's heavy, y'all. All right, and then finally, failing to apply productivity factors, and that's really applies to a lot of subcontractors, or if you ever self-perform work, sometimes you don't recognize the correct production rate. And so just because, I'm gonna give you an example, just because you pursued a job and you was able to charge $1 a square foot of labor for one job doesn't mean you can charge the same dollar a square foot for the next job. Maybe the next job has some intricacies. Maybe it's 10 stories that you have to get to the job. Maybe you have to go up and down the elevator to get materials. Maybe the production is a lot slower because the walls are radiused, or maybe you have a lot of border tile, or maybe you have all these different nuances that reduce your productivity levels, which drives up your unit cost. So maybe instead of $1 a square foot, it's $10 a square foot. And so if you're not able to look and drill down on also your labor productivity, you may be making that mistake as well. So let's talk about mistake number 1. Y'all ready? If you're ready, say, I'm ready. I know you all just got home and you're eating dinner, sitting back trying to watch the game, but I'm about to put you on game right now for your business. All right, so the danger of unverified subquotes. Subcontractors may exclude critical items. This is really, really important. Regardless if you send what's called a bid submittal or bid instructions or not, subcontractors may exclude critical items. That means sometimes they'll bid whatever they want. They'll just send you a number sometimes. You may have sent explicit instructions, and because they recognize this is not a hard bid scenario, you won't just throw out their number. They will just send you whatever price they want to give. Maybe it is a mechanical contractor and they do not do their own through wall or through roof or through slab penetrations. Maybe they say, hey, we're going to exclude any of the core drills that we have to do through this concrete wall, CMU wall, whatever. We're not going to provide that. You have to do it yourself. And now all of a sudden, all of your MEP trades excluded that, and now you have what's called a scope gap. And I want you to understand it's critical that you're able to identify those things because it's costing you money, right? Because someone has to do it. The second part of not verifying subquotes is this: apples to oranges bids confuses the number. What do you mean, Michael? See, most owners are not sophisticated enough to recognize they received one quote for $100 and then they got a second quote for $200. Well, just because you received a cheaper quote doesn't mean it's the right one. The same thing with us as general contractors. Just because we received a lower number, it doesn't mean it's apples to apples. Sometimes we're comparing apples to oranges. And what does that mean? That means, did we do a true comparison? And that is where we bring the bid tabulation form. We use a bid tabulation form. We identify every scope item, not only on the drawings, but also in the specifications, through RFIs. Are there any general requirement items that we may need to be completed? Let's say, for instance, we need the demo company to also include their own dumpsters for removing the debris from the job site. Well, one company may included it, another company may excluded it. That may be the difference in the number. What if one company believe the job is going to take 9 months and another company say, well, we can do it in 2 months? That also could be apples to oranges. And so you really need to understand how to level the playing field, and we use what's called a bid tabulation form in order to get apples to apples or oranges to oranges. And then lastly, the danger of unverified subquotes is that you are responsible, not the sub. You are. Everybody say, I'm responsible. I can't hear you out there. I'm not sure what's going on. Some of you watching this replay and you're not participating, say, I am responsible.
I am responsible.
What does that mean, Michael? And I said this during our PM Plus Site Super Pro course. As the general contractor, the owner hired us as the professional. That is what we get paid to do. That is our job, is to make sure that we are not hiring apples to oranges, that we're not just doing that comparison incorrectly and we're just taking the cheapest bid, or we're taking the less qualified subcontractor. It's our responsibility to identify when there's a problem with the scope. It's not the sub's responsibility. Sometimes, you all, we can send them bid instructions, bid manual. And if you don't know what a bid manual is, you need to be in our pro course, because the bid manual, I'm going to show you how to put one together. I'm going to show you all the components of a bid manual, how to have not only your instructions to bidders, how to have your contract documents, how to have a scope of work specifically for each trade, right? So if you have a site contractor that has to do all the work, you maybe want them to do some site clearance, some site demo. Maybe you want them to do all the underground utilities, the water, the sanitary, the storm. Also, maybe you want them to do the sewer as well. Well, maybe there are septic tanks. Well, do you want the plumber to do that work, or you want the site contractor to do that work? And so to make sure that every site contractor includes the septic, you want to place it in your scope for the site work contractors. So what does that mean? That's something you have to write, something you have to prepare. And then in your bid instructions, you may have due dates, like RFI due dates. If you have questions, you need to send them in by this deadline. If you have a bid date, let's say, for instance, your bid is due to the owner on Tuesday at 3 p.m. Well, you don't tell your sub to send it to you at Tuesday at 3 p.m. Why? Because they always turn it in late, and now you don't have their quote. You will ask them to turn it in a day ahead of time. So you will say in your instructions the bid is due on Monday at 2 p.m., thereby giving yourself some time in between the time your bid is due to actually make follow-up phone calls to actually find out, do they have the right scope? In case they do not submit the bid on time, you still have time to call and follow up. So it's things like that that helps us to be more responsible. Why? Because it's not the sub's responsibility, it's our responsibility. One last time, say it with me, it's my responsibility.
It's my responsibility.
Oh yeah, y'all can tell I just came from church. I want you to understand this. Labor assumptions often fail. Labor is our biggest hidden risk. And I'm going to tell you right now, don't underestimate your own labor. Michael, what do you mean by that? If you are a general contractor, you will have supervision on the job. You may have a project manager on the job. That is your labor. So even if you hire subcontractors to do most of the work, what if the work gets extended and it wasn't your fault? What if the project originally was 6 months and now it's taking 12 months? All of a sudden now, maybe because you didn't estimate how much time you really needed to be on the job, maybe you only put time, watch this, you only put time for your superintendent in the field, but maybe there was 3 months ahead of time, ahead of actual in-field construction, that the superintendent needed to work with your project manager on issuing subcontracts, making sure the scope is correct. Maybe your your superintendent needed to go on site of an existing property and take pictures of everything. Maybe they need to document all of the existing conditions. Maybe that's time you didn't assume. So I want you to start thinking about all the areas that you may be missing the labor for your staff as well, okay? Also, national averages is not necessarily your project reality. And this is a big thing. Some of you are not familiar or really old enough to know the means book, MEANS. When I graduated college in 1997 and I started my career initially in estimating, I was first handed a book called Means, and we actually learned means in college. And so the federal government likes to use means, and this is a book that has a lot of unit cost data from across the country for all types of work. And so what we used to do, if we didn't receive a subquote, we would use means as a source to plug in a number. So means will give you a unit rate for tile installation or a unit rate for brick veneer. And so we'll go check the means data books. And even though you can actually use means and say, hey, we'll use a modifier depending on whether it's in California or New York or Florida, what I come to find out after years of doing estimating, means data was never accurate compared to what we have here in Orlando. And so I recognized it was pretty much garbage. And I hate to say that, and that's no discredit to means, but I recognize in my career of doing this for over 20 years that means never was accurate. It wasn't even close. So you have to be careful trying to use national averages or these different resources to try to figure out what your number's going to be. You have to be very, very careful, okay? And then we also have other things that impact our labor numbers, like site access. You know, maybe you had to bus your staff or the teams into the project, or maybe you know, instead of needing a 6-foot ladder to reach something, now you need a 20-30 foot lift, and that takes time, so that slows your production rates down. And I want you to start thinking about these things. So maybe how are you going to get materials up to a certain floor? Will your staff have to go upstairs because the elevator's not there yet? Think about it. There's all these different things. Will you need to spend money to get a material hoist to go up and down several floors? I want you to start thinking about all of these different items. And so there's a significant impact to missing scope. You know, that the typical scope gap loss per trade is anywhere from $5,000 to $15,000, and that's on the low side. That's on the low side. You know, missing small details, they often lead to change orders and conflicts and profit erosion. So I want to give you one example of, I'm going to give you two examples. The first one I want to give you, these are my personal examples. So I was working on a church, and so I had the contractor to give me a price. They gave me a price for the work, and they said, hey, we want to exclude the lull. We want you to pick up the lull. And I honestly really didn't think anything about it. I gave them a deadline. I gave them a due date. I said, hey, we want you to be done by a certain period of time. And I didn't realize that it would be an issue. I'm thinking, okay, I can factor in if we go over this period of time. Are y'all with me? If we go over this date, I'll back charge them for you know, whatever time we go over. Are y'all with me? If you still with me, drop a yes. If you still with me, come off mute, whatever. I need to know you're not sleeping on Michael. I need to know you're awake. So I'm thinking, okay, we cool. I've been doing this a while. I should be smart enough. I've been here before. I designated the time, and I captured the cost, but guess what the problem was? He changed the size load he needed. Oh my goodness. So he went from a 5,000 pound load to a 10,000 pound load, and the price doubled. So we went from like $2,000 a month to almost $5,000 a month for over 6 months. And so all of a sudden, boom, that was a loss. And so I realized, even though I thought I covered it, I wasn't detailed enough, even down to the size of the actual load that he stated we needed. And so if I would have known exactly, he wouldn't have made that change on me. Then we could have negotiated and said, hey, no, you need to place it in your number, or maybe I need to price it differently, and we figure out, hey, maybe your number is still too heavy to my budget. I need you to come down. At least I would have had the opportunity to negotiate that number down, but I didn't. It was too late. I signed his subcontract already. I had to eat the difference. So that's one example. And so I want to give you some of these examples of missing scope items. Here's another example, my drywall labor sub. Let me ask, how many of you have hired a labor sub? How many of you hired a labor sub before? Yes, no?
Yes.
Yes.
So if you hire a labor sub, that means you're buying all the materials, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So this is what happened to me. My drywall labor sub says, hey, we'll hang all the drywall that you have in here for a certain price. I can't remember. Let's just call it $1 a square foot. Okay. $40 a sheet. Let's just call it that, right? He said, but you need to provide all the screws. Anybody had to do that? I said, okay, no problem. I'll provide all the screws. Oh, okay. So we signed the contract, the PO or whatever. You did that before, Nehemiah?
Yeah.
I wonder if this happened to you, or am I just the dummy? So what happened is, I said, okay, I'll go get the screws. I go pick up the screws I thought they needed. I come back, they say, no, these not the right screws. We need this other type of screw. And then all of a sudden he says, we need 5 boxes of those. I'm thinking, this one box is enough. And I didn't realize that he was actually not only getting a special screw for the type of tool he had, but he also was actually taking those extra screws to other jobs. And I was the dummy. I said, you got me, but it won't happen again. Right? And so I realized that it's so important to be specific as possible when it comes to the scope. And also when you're providing my materials, that you're also specifying specifically what. What exactly do you need? What exactly do you need? And then let me make sure I quantify it, because sometimes we just take the subcontractor word for it, whereas maybe they only need 1 box and not 5. Some of us will just go get 5 just because they said they need 5. And they will haggle with you. No, I've been doing this a long time. I need 5 boxes. I'm like, no. Well, how about this? You start with these 2 boxes and let me see them go up. Now, let me tell you where you'll mess up again. You'll buy those 2 boxes and you will leave. And you'll come back and that box gone. They've already taken that box to another job, and you see just, oh, boss man, we need some more screws. You're like, why you need more screws? I just brought some. See, we gone, we used them. Guess what? I'll go count every last screw. I'll go count every last screw just to see, did you actually install these screws? Because they will get you. So you have to be careful, even supplying material, that you're not oversupplying material. That if you're going to supply certain fasteners or certain types of tape, they try to do me the same way on drywall tape. I'm like, drywall tape is not that expensive, but guess what? They don't want to spend the money. So they able to stock up on the dum-dums. And they're able to stock up on us that don't think about, hey, let's actually count this. Let's actually supervise this to make sure they're using these things and they're not taking it, to another site. Matter of fact, I would never drop off a bunch of materials like that to a job where it can walk off from the job when I have a labor sub. I'm going to feed them a little bit at a time so I can manage it and make sure they're not taking advantage of me. And secondarily, I would do my own takeoff. Matter of fact, you can sit right there with them and say, hey, let's do a takeoff together. And let's determine what amount we really, really need or what amount we're going to start off with. Is that good or what? Yes, sir. I've been through it. You all can tell I have some good lessons, huh? So what's the cure? This is the cure. We want to build the correct system. We want to have a structured takeoff, and we want to make sure we have the right type of bid review. It's really, really important. So we want to have a system in place, how we take time to take the bid off, take time to review it. What I've noticed is that some of my clients, they don't have a review time. So I was trained this way, right? I came up through this industry, worked for major contractors, billion-dollar firms, $100 million firms. Like, I've worked for some of the top firms in the country, and all of them do it the same way. There's a time that we're going to all sit down and we're going to review the numbers you put together. Oftentimes, it was either one of the owners or a head pre-con manager or a head executive plus another superintendent that was able to give input on what had to happen in the field. So now it's not just one person thinking about it, because if I estimate all the time, I'm in the office. I don't really see what happens in the field. I don't always know how things go together. I don't always know like the delays that happen. But someone that's in the field every day, they do. So having that input and having that insight from a person like that, say, hey, let's go sit down and go through these numbers together. Thereby, we come up with a more accurate depiction of what it really should be. So let's have a bid review. Let's use bid tabulation sheets for our subquotes so we can compare apples to apples or apples to oranges to get apples to apples. Let's also look at production-driven labor costing, so we make sure that we're carrying the right numbers if we are self-performing certain things. So we'll sit down and say, well, will it really take, can a person really get, 200 square foot of tile installed in an hour by themselves on this job? Is that really even possible, right? Maybe it's an oversized format tile, and maybe it's going to take 2 people to carry that piece of tile and not one. So now that just doubled our productivity. So we have to start thinking about these things. And maybe we need to create an actual checklist to cover scope gaps, right? So we actually develop a checklist. So every time we do a job, we continue to build out this list. Hey, what did we miss the last time? Right? Because we are creatures of habit. I'm going to say that again. We are creatures of habit. Most of us will use the same subcontractors. The same subcontractors will do the same stuff, whether it's good or bad. They're going to do the same stuff over and over again. We have a tendency as humans to do the same thing. So let's look at the mistakes we made in the past, and let's write those things down and say, hey, let's develop a checklist and say, hey, we missed this the last time. We missed that the last time. Let's make sure that we do not miss these things again, and so we can check those things off. All right, so that's creating a good system, okay? So the last thing I just want to kind of mention, next week we're going to talk about a little further some more things in regards to how to manage our bid process. We're going to talk about that, and then in our Estimating Pro series, we're going to break down in detail each one of these processes to help you be better prepared for it. So you all that are on the call, or maybe you are watching this replay, if you go ahead and make your purchase for the Pro course, where you want to use coupon code, my wife will drop it in the chat. You want to use coupon code EST Pro 2025. EST Pro 2025, okay? And so you want to make sure to use that to get your discount for the next 5-day course, our Estimating Pro course. Okay, so we're going to show you how to build professional estimates. We're going to show you how to protect your profit even before you get to construction. We're going to, of course, again, for those that are on the call, you are in our PM plus our Site Super course, and so you're getting all the templates, all the tools, all the checklists. You're getting everything I have for your business, okay? So that's going to just give you a little bit more on the estimating side, so you can actually have a very well-rounded business, okay? And so when you get ready to go to the link to purchase the course, you want to use this link, PMDY link /estimating, and you can go there, use that coupon code, and you'll actually get some money off, okay, for the current price. All right, in a couple weeks the price will go up, so you want to make sure that you go ahead and lock in that number as soon as possible. Next Sunday we will be on again, next Sunday as well, taking a deeper dive into some of these estimating best practices. All right, so we want you to share this with your team, share these videos. This will be out on YouTube as well. It'll be in the portal. We want to make sure you're sharing this information with your team. Do not keep it to yourself, okay? And so we want to continue to build out our company so we can be more and more profitable. All right, so at this time I want to ask if there are any specific questions that I can answer. Are there any specific questions that I can answer? I just did a bunch of talking in 35 minutes. Any questions?
No, not really questions, Mike, but it just tells me that, for the residential side, I know they're actually GCs too now, but we still do residential work, and that piece about doing the labor sub only, I had an instance where I had to do like 3 runs just this past Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and I was like, I didn't even think about it. I ain't gonna front, I didn't even think, hey, let me just stay there and just look and see. But I bought a whole bunch of material, and all the bags are gone. All the bags are level, and the concrete is gone. But I don't know if they truly use them.
Right, that part, bro.
Yeah.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Michael.
That's always a question for me also.
Yeah.
I have those issues on a couple of projects. I mean, we're doing a clubhouse renovations right now, and we're trying to work it out, make sure that we're streamlining the materials. But contractors say, oh, we need 10 gallons of paint. We need 15 gallons of paint. Like, how do you know where this paint is going?
Right.
Are you sure they're using this paint?
Right.
This is very good. This is very good.
Right. And that's a huge item to supervise. And again, just like I use an example, I had to literally start sitting down with my subs and say, hey, let's come to an agreement on what the number is, right? So if we know there's an overage, I'm not ordering that first. I'm not
Michael?
Yes, sir.
Michael, that's so funny you're saying that, because I literally sit with the sub.
Yeah.
And we actually budgeted a job out. I'm like, how many gallons of paint you think you're going to need for this job?
Yeah.
We sat down, we worked out the numbers. Halfway through the paint job, I'm like, okay, we're halfway to the job. And we're going to give you 100 gallons of paint that you told me you're going to need.
No, sir.
So what happened?
Right. Yeah. So we have to figure out a way contractually to tie them to those numbers, right? So when we sit down and meet with them and say, hey, this is the number, listen, I know maybe in the past, and especially if it was a previous contractor you reusing, I know we sat down in the past and I just went out and bought it. I'm not doing that anymore. Why? Because on these past jobs, and I have the receipts, I spent this much more money after we sat down and figured out what we needed. No more excuses. Now you need to take, have some skin in the game. Now you need to take some ownership for this, right? If your people are wasting paint, maybe they're washing out a whole line of paint, right? Sometimes if they pull their hoses, if they're spraying and they have a whole line of paint and they're wasting all the paint that's in the hose, right? Maybe you need to spray that out, right? And get that out of the line before you just start washing out all this paint every time. So it's so many different things, and you have to make them take some ownership and say, hey, first time, second time, shame on me, but not again. Not again. And we need to sit down and talk about this. And so I believe in what's fair, and what's fair, if we come to an agreement, we should be fair about it. Now, if I see that, maybe we both made a mistake, that may be a different conversation. But number one, I'm going to do my own estimate first, right? Then I'm going to look at whatever the coverage rate is on that paint. If it's 200 square foot a gallon, 150 square foot a gallon, guess what? I'm going to use at least 20% waste. I'm going to include that in my number. I'm going to figure the amount of coverage that we really need, and then I'm going to go out there and see, okay, well, how far did this 5-gallon bucket go? Even if you're not on site, if you have someone on site, okay, when they use that whole 5-gallon, how far did it go? Measure it. And then I'm going to compare that to what I originally estimated to see, are these numbers pretty close to what we originally figured, or is it off? And see, that's what we do to get ahead of it. Right, we get ahead of it early, so if we need to sit down and have a conversation again, but no, I'm no longer going to allow you to just have me run into the store back and forth. Nope. We're going to figure what it is. If it goes over, you're going to have to eat some of this too. And I'm going to watch. A matter of fact, like I said, Nehemiah running back to the store every night. We're not doing that, right? We're not doing that. So I'll feed you a little bit. I want to see how much you're getting up, because you're not going to take advantage of me. I still, watch this, I still have screws in my storage, nails in my storage. The guy told me what gun he wanted to shoot some track down with, and then he changed the type of tool he wanted. I couldn't take the nails back and get a refund. I'm stuck with the nails and still have to go buy a different type of nails. No, we're not doing that. I got a lot of stories, y'all, a lot. So, listen.
And at the end of the day, it really hurts when you start to go back and look at the storage. You're like, where did this stuff come from? What happened? And you're looking at it and you get so depressed about it, because you're like,
yes, sir.
This is my overhead going.
Right, exactly. And the funny thing is, honestly, what I've seen a lot of other contractors do, when they become a little bit more savvy with those things, what I've seen other contractors do, they'll actually use properties that they're developing, properties maybe that they're going to do rental properties, and they'll use up all that material, extra material on those types of properties. So, you know, definitely if you can be innovative with how you can still not let that sit in your storage and actually use it somewhere else, try to do that. Sometimes you may have to just figure it out. What can we do to do something with this stuff? So, but anyway, I hope that this session was a benefit to you all. Thank you so much for joining me on this Sunday at 6:30. Also, we'll be on next Sunday at 6:30. Okay, again, before our pro course for estimating pre-construction starts. It will start May the 12th. May the 12th. So it'll go from Monday night all the way to Friday night. And I'm excited for that, okay? So I know it's going to be really, really beneficial for you and your team. And listen, you will have it cataloged. So if you hire any new staff, you can use it as a training tool for your staff to say, hey, I need you to go watch this. And even if you need us to put some quizzes together, we have that. So if they want to get certified, we now have a certificate that'll go with it saying, hey, they've mastered this information, they know it, they understand it. If they don't pass the exam, well, no, go take it again until you pass the exam. So you can use it to help train your staff, all right? But thank you all so much. Let me pray over you before we head out, as my tradition. Father, we just say thank you for these entrepreneurs, these business owners. We pray over their business. We pray that you bless their business, help them to be fruitful. I pray for them personally, their families, that you give them peace, you'll give them hope, that you'll continue to show them what to do, where to go, to complete their vision, their purpose, not only for their business, but for their own lives. And we just say thank you for protecting us, protecting our businesses from the locusts, Lord God, from the canker, those things that would try to come eat up our profits. But help us to be more wise and help us to make better choices and help us to actually implement the strategies that's going to help us to grow. And we say thank you for all these things. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right. God bless you all. We'll see you next week. See you next week. Bye-bye.